Her screen lit up at 1:13 a.m. The message read, "You're not alone tonight?" I was. It came while I was getting a blanket. She dozed off on the couch, arms tucked under her cheek, breathing soft and even. I wasn't trying to snoop. I wasn't. But when her phone vibrated once, then twice, then a third time in quick succession, the screen flashing against the dim blue glow of the TV, I froze. The words were short, casual, terrifying. "You're not alone tonight?" I stared at it like it might rearrange itself. Like it might change to something innocent if I looked again. It didn't. That sentence echoed through me like footsteps in an empty hallway. My first instinct wasn't anger. It wasn't even fear. It was calculation. Someone out there knew she wasn't alone. Someone expected her to be with them. I didn't touch the phone. I didn't wake her. I stood perfectly still, blanket still in hand, and stared like a man glimpsing the start of an avalanche. The sender's name was just an initial. A single capital L. Not even a name, just a placeholder. A shadow. Someone close enough to text her like that in the middle of the night. Someone careful enough to hide in plain sight. Her breathing didn't change. Her eyes stayed shut. Either she trusted me completely or she was just too tired to care. I didn't know which was worse. I backed away, one slow step at a time, and returned to the hallway with the blanket pressed to my chest like armor. I didn't cover her with it. I left her cold. I didn't sleep. Instead, I lay in bed replaying the message over and over, dissecting the word choice, the punctuation, the timing. Who uses tonight at 1:13 a.m.? That's not anticipation. That's disappointment. They thought she would be alone. She wasn't. They weren't asking, they were checking. And she didn't respond. Not then, at least. At 1:27 a.m. her phone pinged again. I heard it from down the hall. I counted the seconds. 7. Then another buzz. And then nothing. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. By morning I was someone else. Not a husband. Not yet a detective. More like an archaeologist digging through tiny daily ruins, her shower times, her Spotify playlists, the way she'd started locking the bathroom door. All of it was data now. Nothing was innocent. Everything mattered. When she stirred awake at dawn, still on the couch, I watched her glance at her phone. Her face didn't flinch. She didn't smile. Just typed quickly, erased, typed again. I pretended to make coffee. She asked if I slept well. I said yes. I always say yes. But I've never been more awake in my life. She was already awake when I came down. Still in her robe, hunched over the kitchen island with her phone clenched like a lifeline. Her thumb hovered just above the screen, not scrolling, not texting. Just poised. Trembling. "Morning," I said, like I always did. She didn't look up. "Morning." I watched the glow of her screen reflected in her glasses. A flash of blue and white. Bubbles. A typing bar. Then a sudden swipe upward. Gone. I poured coffee and kept my voice light. "You got a bunch of messages last night. Everything okay?" She blinked, too slow. Her smile was like a paper cut, quick, sharp, and too shallow to matter. "Oh, that? Just spam bots. You know, weird links. They're everywhere lately. Spam bots." I stirred my coffee slowly, one sugar clockwise. She was watching me now, like she was waiting for something. An accusation. An outburst. But I just nodded and sipped. She turned her phone toward her, angled just enough to block my view. Her thumbs moved fast, unnaturally fast, and the entire chat disappeared in a blink. Deleted. Thread gone. Like it had never existed. My hands didn't shake. But my thoughts raced. People don't lie that fast unless they've practiced. And she had practiced. The body doesn't betray itself that easily, not unless it knows how. The two still eyes, the smile that didn't touch them, the way she stood too straight afterward, like a soldier awaiting inspection. She called it spam. But my mind recorded everything. 1:13 a.m. You're not alone tonight? 1:27 a.m. Another ping. Now, her fingers trembling over the word baby. Yes. I saw it. Before she swiped the screen. A single message preview in the thread list. Can't wait to taste you again, baby. Spam? Spam doesn't call you baby. Spam doesn't get deleted like it's radioactive. Spam doesn't make your hands shake while your voice goes glossy with overcompensation. She buttered a slice of toast like it was the most normal thing in the world. I watched the blade drag slow across the bread and I thought, she's lying. She's lying so well she doesn't even flinch. But I did. Not on the outside, not visibly. Just internally like a photograph curling in fire. I went back upstairs. Took my coffee with me and closed the door. I opened my notes app. 1:13 a.m. You're not alone tonight? Baby. Spam claim at 7:46 a.m. Deleted thread observed. Behavior, nervous, overselling, hands trembled, forced smile. I didn't know what I was building yet, but I knew I needed a record. I needed to be able to prove, not just to anyone else, but to myself, that this wasn't paranoia. The problem with loving someone is that your brain becomes complicit. It censors. It edits. It wants to believe them. But now mine was learning to distrust on command. Every interaction was data. Every excuse was a variable. Every lie a pattern. I had no proof. Not yet. But I had something better. I had instinct. And it had finally woken up. I told her I had a conference in Denver. Hug, keys, suitcase. The whole routine, polished, practiced, perfectly rehearsed. I smiled when I kissed her cheek. I even made a dumb joke about airline peanuts and overpriced coffee. She laughed, the sound just a little too clean. But the suitcase was empty. And I never boarded the flight. By 9:12 a.m. I was parked 3 blocks down, the rental car idling beneath a canopy of dead leaves. Cold coffee in the cup holder. Hands on the wheel, knuckles white. Back at the house, nestled behind the ceramic jars in the kitchen, next to the bag of stale crackers she never throws out, was a camera no bigger than a wine cork. Motion activated. Wide angle. Linked to my phone. It wasn't paranoia anymore. It was calibration. A test of reality. A way to determine whether the shaking in my chest was fear or the truth knocking on the walls of my mind. She waved from the doorway when I left. I saw her silhouette through the rearview mirror, shrinking with distance. At 10:03 a.m. she poured herself a second cup of coffee. Wore that oversized sweatshirt I got her 3 Christmases ago, the one that still smelled like cinnamon and laundry soap. She looked peaceful. Normal. By 10:17 she was on the phone. No sound, but I saw her pace. The way she laughed quietly, head tilted down. That smile? That exact smile she used to give me. And at 10:41 a.m. she began cleaning. Fast. Efficient. Wiping counters that weren't dirty. Smoothing the cushions. Vacuuming the living room twice. Her phone was never out of reach. I wrote it down. 10:41. Cleaning frenzy begins. Nervous energy. Preparing for something? Or someone? I waited. Minutes dragged like wet rope. At 11:06 a.m. she checked the window. Twice. Then once more, longer this time. Holding the curtain open just a little too long, like she was measuring something. My stomach coiled. I could almost feel her breath from the screen. At 11:24 a.m. she disappeared from view. At 11:31 the front door opened. I sat up so fast the coffee spilled across my lap. It wasn't the delivery guy. Not a neighbor. Not her sister. I didn't recognize him. Early 30s. Bearded. Confident posture, but no jacket. He moved like someone who'd been here before. Too comfortable. Too fast. She met him in the hallway. My hallway. I couldn't hear the words, but the body language was fluent, casual familiarity, casual intimacy. His hand grazed her back as they passed out of frame. She didn't flinch. They were headed toward the living room. The couch. Our couch. I paused the feed. My finger hovered. I couldn't go on. Not yet. Not until I could breathe again. A numbness bloomed behind my eyes. Not pain. Not rage. Just cold clarity. This was the moment. The moment where suspicion becomes truth. Where you stop wondering if you're crazy and start wondering if you've been too sane all along. I sat there in the parked car, camera feed still open, the time ticking on. I had the footage. I had the face. I had the timestamp. And I still had one final, ugly question echoing in my head. What else have I missed? At 8:16 p.m. he walked in. Not snuck. Not crept. Walked. Like it was his house. Button down, sleeves rolled, a silver watch catching the hall light. He didn't knock. She opened the door before he even reached for the bell, like she'd been standing there waiting. Like she knew the sound of his footsteps. He called her baby before he even shut the door. I watched all of it from my phone, parked 2 blocks away, the feed silent except for my own breathing. She didn't flinch when he leaned in. She tilted her head without thinking, the way she used to when I kissed her in the kitchen while the pasta boiled. He kissed her neck, soft and territorial. And she laughed. Laughed. Not the brittle, hollow laugh I get lately. Not the tight smile she gives me at dinner when I ask how her day was. This one was easy. Loose. Real. I used to think I was imagining things, the distance, the quietness, the glass wall between us that had slowly risen brick by invisible brick. But here it was confirmation. In motion. In color. In my own kitchen. The same counter where she once iced my birthday cake, late at night wearing one of my old t-shirts and humming off key. That room used to smell like cinnamon and comfort. Now it was the backdrop for this invasion. He leaned against the counter like he belonged there, poured himself a drink. Ice cubes clinking against the same glassware we got from her aunt's wedding. Casual, practiced. She rested a hand on his chest, fingers tracing the seam of his shirt. And then he said it. Did he leave the papers unlocked yet? The feed crackled a little. My ears rang. I didn't breathe. Papers. Unlocked. Not, is he gone? Not, do you think he suspects? He wasn't worried about me. He was interested in access. She didn't correct him. Didn't look shocked or appalled. She just shrugged. Light, almost amused, and said something I couldn't hear. But her face told me everything. This wasn't just an affair. It was a plan. I wrote it down immediately. 8:16 p.m. Mail enters through front door. Refers to her as baby casually. Physical familiarity. Kisses neck, no hesitation. Asks, did he leave the papers unlocked yet? Potential financial motive? Legal documents? I'd been tracking the wrong variables. This wasn't just about betrayal. It was about strategy. Something bigger. She wasn't just falling out of love. She was setting something up. And I had just walked into a different kind of storm. Not emotional. Tactical. The kind that costs more than heartbreak. The kind that costs everything. Once we're through with him, the rest is ours. That's what she said. Clear as glass. Crisp as a confession. There was no static in the feed. No distortion. No room for interpretation. Her voice was soft, low. Not angry, not excited. Just casual. Like she was talking about weekend plans. Like I was already gone. I didn't blink. I didn't move. I just stared at the footage on my phone as my heartbeat tried to crawl out of my ribs. She opened the drawer beneath the spice rack, the one she never uses, pulled out the small metal box and lifted the false bottom. Inside, my safe key. The key I'd hidden so carefully it felt like a secret even from myself. She handed it to him like it was a piece of gum. He didn't ask questions, just smirked and tucked it into his pocket. That's the big one? He asked. She nodded, swirling her wine. Documents. Codes. If he's dumb enough to keep the will in there, we're set. Then, as if to punctuate the insult, he's sentimental. He doesn't believe in cloud backups. I wrote it down. Safe key location revealed. Drawer under spice rack. False bottom. Discussed contents. Documents, codes, possibly will. She assumes I keep everything local, no digital copies. Voice tone. Bored. Unaffected. Phrase used. Once we're through with him, that wasn't just infidelity. That was intent. That was premeditation. She said the words like she'd rehearsed them, like it was already over, like my presence in her life was a formality they were preparing to erase. Not a husband, not a person, just a barrier. They weren't hiding in shadows anymore. They were sitting under my lights, sipping my wine, plotting how to unthread the life I built. And still, she looked elegant, like the version of her I fell in love with. The exact mask. That's what chilled me the most. Because when she raised the glass and said, just act natural when he calls, I realized something I hadn't before. They weren't afraid of me. They were managing me, like a risk factor on a spreadsheet, like an old wall you measure before demolition. I watched her touch his arm, smile that smile, the one with the dimple only I used to get. And I realized, this wasn't a love story gone wrong. This was a coup. And I was the dethroned king, still sitting in the palace, unaware the torches had already been lit outside my gates. I walked in mid-laughter. That sound used to be mine. Now it felt like a song played at someone else's funeral. She dropped her glass. It shattered on the tile. A clean, crystalline scream. He reached for his phone like it was a shield, as if anything on that screen could stop what was already set in motion. I didn't yell, didn't run, didn't even blink. I just stood in the doorway, coat still on, keys in hand, watching. She froze like a deer halfway through a lie, her body half turned toward me, half stuck in that room with him. He took 2 steps back, not out of fear. Calculation. I could see it in his eyes. He was measuring exits, estimating distance, playing chess with air. But I didn't give him a move. I walked in slowly, steady, and set a folder on the counter between them. It landed with a soft thud, but it may as well have been a gavel. Inside, printed screenshots of their messages, dates, times, endearments, photos of him entering our home, time-stamped, tagged. Her voice, transcribed. Once we're through with him, every baby, every he won't even notice, every casual betrayal preserved in black ink. I didn't say a word, because what else was there to say? The truth was no longer something I needed to ask about. It was laid out like evidence on a table. Their little secret no longer belonged to them. Her face drained of color, lips parted but silent. Her hands trembled like she couldn't decide whether to cry or run. I can explain, she choked out finally. Her voice wasn't angry or even defensive. It was thin, ghostly, but there was nothing left to decode, nothing to clarify. Because when people say I can explain, what they mean is, let me reshape the truth just long enough to make you hesitate. And I didn't need hesitation. I needed precision. She reached for the folder with shaking fingers, flipping through pages like she might find something redeemable. Some out-of-context line to salvage the wreckage. But all she found was herself. Exposed, documented, logged. And him? He just stood there silent, uncertain, watching his co-conspirator crumble. Like he was realizing for the first time that this hadn't been a game. I didn't need revenge. Not yet. I just needed them to see it. See themselves the way I'd seen them for weeks. Two people who thought they were smarter than silence. I left the folder on the counter. I turned and walked out. No threats. No monologue. Because the trap had already closed. They just hadn't heard the snap yet. The police came fast. Quieter than I expected. No sirens. No shouting. Just the rustle of vests, the clink of cuffs, the dull authority of practiced steps. I knew the timing down to the minute. I'd submitted everything 3 days earlier, the footage, the texts, the folder I'd once dropped on the counter like a bomb. Fraud. Attempted coercion. Conspiracy to defraud a spouse. Even the whispered plan to fake my signature on the documents I never left lying around. It was all in the file. Numbered, tagged, cross-referenced. They didn't need to ask me twice. He went first. Wrists behind his back. Head down, lips tight. That silver watch, the one he was so proud of, glinting like a last word. He looked smaller than I remembered. Not shorter. Just reduced. His swagger broke in real time, his expression crumbling under the weight of consequences. She came next. Barefoot. Hair undone. A robe clutched to her chest like it could shield her from what was real. She called my name. Not once. Again and again, desperate, pleading, high-pitched like someone shouting underwater. Please wait, just talk to me. Like we were still something. Like the sound of my name in her mouth could reverse the whole thing. I didn't answer. Not then. I just stood by the staircase, watching the front door swing shut behind her. It didn't slam. It didn't creak. It closed soft, like the lid of a casket. And that's exactly what it felt like. Clinical. Clean. Like pulling life support on a version of my life that was already brain dead. Necessary. Final. The silence afterward wasn't relief. It wasn't triumph. It was a kind of stillness I hadn't known in months. Like someone had finally stopped the spinning wheel in my chest. They were gone. Not metaphorically. Not emotionally. Physically. Booked. Processed. Awaiting arraignment. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just walked into the kitchen, picked up the last of the printed screenshots, and fed them into the shredder. Page by page, word by word. Each baby reduced to ribbons. Each he won't notice turned to noise. And when the last page disappeared, I poured a glass of water, sat in the chair by the window, and let the silence stretch. This wasn't revenge. This was documentation. This was truth with teeth. And I wasn't afraid of it anymore. Her phone buzzed one more time as they took her away. I almost didn't check it. It sat there on the counter where she'd dropped it, face down, screen still smudged with her fingerprints. The soft vibration was almost apologetic, like the device itself felt guilty for still being loyal to her. I picked it up without thinking. Old reflexes. I told myself it didn't matter anymore. That everything was over. But it wasn't. The screen lit up. Same number. Same cold, calculated tone. One line. Plan B activated. Good luck. No name. No context. No emoji or punctuation, just those words hanging there like a countdown. My mouth went dry. I tapped into her messages. The usual apps were clean, recently wiped, of course. But she was never that sloppy. I swiped down, held my finger on the file manager, and found it. Work folder, private. A hidden archive, locked behind a second password. I guessed it on the third try. It was our anniversary. Inside, dozens of message threads under coded names, conversations in another tone, colder, transactional. Mentions of offshore accounts, crypto transfers, bank names I'd only heard in whistleblower articles. Instructions. And one name. Or at least a letter. L. I stared at that thread like it might blink back. It was different from the other one, not romantic, not intimate. No baby, no I miss you. Just strategy. Movement. Planning. She was working with someone else. He wasn't the whole story. He was the distraction. This L. He was methodical. He asked for photos, inventory, financial breakdowns. His tone was surgical, calculated. He knew everything, the safe, the power of attorney docs, even which browser I used for banking. He was the one who had written, "If he backs out, go quiet. Plan B is cleaner anyway." There were notes in her handwriting, photos of documents I'd kept locked away, security questions I never gave her. She'd found them. She'd logged them. I had shut one door, slammed it, really, but another was already swinging open. Not just betrayal, not just infidelity, conspiracy, fraud, organized, and it hadn't ended with her arrest. It had only changed shape. For weeks I thought I was chasing the truth, but now I realized the truth was chasing me. I wasn't scared, just unfinished. The house was silent. No echo of footsteps. No faint hum of her singing off-key in the shower. But it didn't feel like peace. It felt like a crime scene after the tape comes down. Technically clear, but spiritually contaminated. I changed the locks that afternoon. Every bolt, every dead latch. The locksmith didn't ask questions. Maybe he could tell from my face. I froze the joint accounts, called the bank, verified every password, removed her name from everything with a signature, a pin, a paper trail. But no matter how many things I crossed out, she still felt present. Like a film you can't wipe off. Every object felt like it had been touched by a lie. The cereal she used to eat late at night. The photo albums she never looked at but wouldn't throw away. Even the way the couch cushions dipped slightly in her old spot. Like the house was still waiting for her to come back. I opened her phone again, that final message still glowing at the top. Plan B activated. Good luck. I had already hired someone. A tech contact from college, discreet, brilliant, morally flexible. He was tracing the number, searching for the digital fingerprints L might have left behind. He called it a deep scrape, said it might take a few days, said he'd seen things like this before. That chilled me more than the message itself. I started checking the windows before bed. Not because I thought she'd come back. No, not her. I was looking for whoever else had been watching. The person behind the person. Because that's the part nobody talks about. How betrayal rewires you. You stop fearing the person who broke you. You start fearing the ones who were standing beside them. A hand behind the curtain. A second lens in the room. She was gone. Physically, legally, emotionally. But the story she left behind, it moved differently. Quietly. Like a scent you can't place that still makes you sick. I used to think closure was a slam of a door, a final argument, a definitive end. Now I know it's more like an echo, unpredictable, lingering, always returning when the house is still. I slept with the lights on that night, not out of fear, out of strategy, because the shadows didn't belong to me anymore. They never really had. Betrayal doesn't end with the lie. It ends when you stop asking why. I no longer sleep on the left side of the bed. That was her side. I didn't even decide to stop. My body just refused to go back. Some things I erased. Her robe still hanging on the door. The perfume bottle she never capped properly. The mug with her initials chipped on the rim. Gone. Other things I cataloged, like crime evidence. Not because I couldn't let go, but because letting go without learning is just leaving the door unlocked again. I printed out the Plan B message, pinned it to the back of my desk drawer, behind tax receipts and scanned IDs. A warning, a reminder, a scar in paper form. I don't believe in closure anymore. That word feels neat, sentimental. designed to comfort people who need endings. I believe in data, patterns, locked drawers. She used my love like a lever, tilted the entire foundation of my life with it, smiled while doing it, and the worst part? I made it easy. My trust came pre-approved. My silence free with purchase. Now I treat trust like currency, something earned, never loaned. People say love is blind, but it isn't. It just learns to look away over and over until it forgets how to stare truth in the face. They thought I wouldn't notice. They thought love would keep me still. But love, it turns out, is the easiest cover for a heist, and the hardest one to prosecute. The house is quiet now, clean, cold, ordered, and I no longer ask why she did it, because the why doesn't change the how, and the how is the part that leaves marks. She took what she needed and vanished, but I stayed, rebuilt, reinforced, and next time someone walks through that door, they'll find something she never expected, a man who no longer trusts the silence, only what it's trying to hide.